Hello and welcome to News Today. My name is Kimini Nyamani Amano. Coming up, the Ghana Trades Union Congress expresses concern over what it terms the silence of the 2014 budget on employment creation. Ahead, don't go away. Hello again, this is News Today. Now, a 2-unit classroom block under construction and funded by the Parents Teachers Association of St. Paul's Junior High School in Tamale has collapsed on 2 pupils of the school. The 2 are currently in hospital receiving medical attention.
The 2 pupils, Mutawukil Wunam and Fadilan Idrisu, were said to be playing in the classroom block during break time when the wall of the building fell on them, leaving the 2 with severe injuries on their bodies. It took the intervention of residents in the area who struggled to remove the debris off the victims and rush them to the Tamale Teaching Hospital, where they are receiving treatment. A concerned resident, Inusa Abdullahi, who spoke to Joy News, said the collapse of the building was expected because the material that was being used for the project was substandard. He said he had complained to school authorities about the poor work being done by the contractor on the project, but they always looked unconcerned.
The building started when I was passing. So when the train started, it started in around unexpected time because the foundation was, they just dug the thing shallow. And the train itself is not, the depth is not up. But they just do the thing shortly without putting pillars.
Headmaster of the school, Al-Hassan Bukhari, however, said the construction of the classroom is under the supervision of the chairman of the school's PTA, and many appeals drawing his attention to the kind of substandard materials being used by the contractor after several complaints by residents fell on deaf ears.
When started, I used from time to time move around the building and look at it. Then at a certain point I realized that beyond the lintel, the building was not straight. So I drew the attention of the man who was doing the construction and told him this was the observation I had made. So what did he have to say about it?
The PTA chairman, when contacted, declined to comment on the issue. Hashmin Mohammed's report.
Joy News' Hashmin Mohammed has joined us from the northern region. We'll get a quick update on this. Hello, Hashmi. Hello, Hashmi.
Yeah, hello, Kevin.
What more can you tell us about this?
Well, the 2 people of the school are responding to treatment at the Tamale Teaching Hospital. In the interim, the Tamale Metropolitan Assembly has invited the PTA chairman of the school for interrogation to find out what caused the extent to which work has been done at the building, and then the kind of materials that they use for the construction of the building. They have also told school authorities to put a stop to the construction of the 2 classroom blocks so that they can institute an investigation into it.
Many thanks, Hashmin, for that update. But we'll stay on the telephone and talk to Nana Iyawa Kwada. He's Executive Director for the Bureau of Public Safety. Hello, Nana.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. I'm sure this does not come to you as a surprise, but Nana, how can we make sure that our pupils are safe when we take them to school?
Well, we have... Let me express my condolence to the families of those who have lost loved ones and those who are...
Well, luckily, no lives were lost, except the 2 children are currently hospitalized.
Well, I want to wish them well, and then I hope that as a country, this will continue to form a block on our conscience, that we will put in place the necessary remedies to avoid these things recurring. I want to take us back, viewers and listeners, back to the Malcolm disaster,
right,
where they set up an 11-member committee. And what the chairman of the committee said, Professor Samuel Ampedu. He said that it is the view of the Ghana Institute of Engineers that situation in the Melcom building represents that of hundreds of other buildings, not only in Accra, but in many other cities and towns in Ghana, unquote. This is the situation that we are sitting on at the moment. A year on after the Melcom incident, one would expect that if the committee chaired by Professor Ampedu have come out with a report, this report was going to be implemented nationwide. The recommendations were going to be implemented across the nation. We will not sit down for another one to strike in Navrongo, another one to strike in somewhere else before we go there, set up a new investigation committee to investigate it. Why? We have both metropolitan and municipal building inspectors in this country.
Right.
There are people who are responsible to ensure that these buildings spring up with all the high, if you like, the standards, the building code, and everything that must be implemented in this building before they rise up. What work are they doing? And how many of these people have we even, sent to court and successfully prosecuted them to be a deterrent to other people? Look, if we continue in this way as a nation, there are going to be more of such because, in the words of the good old professor, there are hundreds of other buildings, across the cities and towns in this country.
Right. What then can parents do in a situation like this? Because our correspondent tells us the Metropolitan Assembly is called the head of the school and it's interrogating head of the school and then subsequently it institutes an investigation. But what can parents do in this situation because they were funding it in the first place?
Well, I think that, in this situation, parents can take on the building inspector and they can take on the heads of the school. The people who are at the core of this development, parents can take them on because the headmaster, for instance, have a role to play to ensure that the building is sprung up and is being put up by people who are certified to do so, people who know what they are doing. The building inspector, who is part of the Metropolitan Assembly or the Municipal Assembly, is also to ensure that these things are construction procedures are followed. And so we want to bring all these people to the law to find out who did what so that we can avoid it, another time. If we live in this country where people do things and get away with it, especially our building inspectors, some of them are largely, suspected to be going around. Sometimes what they have to do, they just take monies and then they close their eyes to developments that are not appropriate to go on. Eventually, it costs the lives of people. This is a huge disruption in the academic calendar of the school. It's going to pose a huge trauma to the children. And I think this is needless. And so parents, if they are willing, can take the authorities on, both the municipal or metropolitan authority and the school authorities on, so that it will serve as a lesson or as a deterrent, to people who would want to engage in such practices in the future. But that notwithstanding, if we sit as a country unconcerned, and if the media sits unconcerned, if prominent citizens all sit unconcerned, we would always have to come back to the Bureau and, whine and talk about all of these without saving the lives or making the impact that we exist to make.
We'll leave it here, Nana. Nanaya Akwada is Executive Director for the Bureau of Public Safety. We'll move on to some other stories. And the Ghana Catholic Bishops' Conference has, in a communique, stated that the country's economic and social situation is making it difficult for Christians to have a deep and personal encounter with Jesus Christ. The communique signed by President of the Catholic Bishops' Conference, Most Reverend Joseph Osei Bonsu, said the changing social, cultural, economic and political situation in Ghana is making a deep and personal encounter with Jesus Christ very difficult. Most Reverend Joseph Osei Bonsu, who is President of the Catholic Bishops' conference. Will join us later over the telephone. But, well, I understand he's over the telephone. Many thanks, Most Reverend.
Good afternoon.
What you're asking is, does civil society and the EPA do more to protect the environment? You're not happy with what we're doing already?
Well, we commended them for what they are doing, but more needs to be done because there's a lot of environmental degradation going on in various places. Surface mining and all. So we want more to be done.
Let's look at the areas that the Catholic Society has highlighted as areas that would need attention. Which areas are we looking at?
Which areas in what regard?
Which areas would you rather a lot more attention is paid to when it comes to the work of civil society and the EPA on environmental degradation?
Yeah, so those places, there are so many places in the western region, Brungahafu, where mining is going on, surface mining is going on. There are so many places where water is being polluted, where the environment is being destroyed. And I'm sure they know those places themselves. So,
many thanks, Most Reverend, for that. Thank you very much. Move on to some other stories. And a foreign registered vessel at TIA Georgetown has been busted for carrying some items suspected to be cocaine. The seizure of the vessel, said to be from Guyana, was conducted by the Western Naval Command. 5 persons, all foreigners, all foreigners were found on board. A helicopter was on hand to transport the sacks containing the items to Accra for further investigations. The authorities declined interviews for what they described as security reasons. But the latest on this is the fact that we understand it has been transported to Accra for further investigation. So we'll bring you an update on this in our subsequent bulletins. Let's talk about the budget now. And Finance and Economic Planning Minister Seth Terkper says from next year, which is 2014, government will remove taxes imposed on agricultural and fishing inputs, including outboard motors and medical supplies, which also includes condoms.
Stabilization levy, which is expected to end at the end of December 2014, will now terminate as of June 2014. The special import levy scheduled to end in June 2015 will now end at the close of 2014. Further, it is proposed that the following should be specifically exempted from the special import levy with immediate effect: agriculture and fishing inputs such as cutlasses, outboard motors and fishing nets, medical supplies including condoms, educational materials, and energy bulbs that were exempted from import duty under the original customs tariff. Mr. Speaker, the preference for VAT is more efficient and it also enhances compliance.
The 2014 budget has also allocated 136 million cedis to modernize agriculture in an effort to ensure food security, according to the Finance Minister, Seth Terkper. The sector between 2014 and 2016 will receive special attention as a priority area.
According to the budget presented before Parliament, approximately 4.6 million cedis from the annual budget funding amount has already been spent on agriculture modernization from January to September 2013. In the 2014 budget, the Food Security and Emergency Preparation Program to be rolled out will also make provision for national strategic stock for emergencies, as well as establish food insecurity early warning systems. Minister of Finance Seth Terkper indicated some irrigation projects which were mentioned in the 2013 budget were still ongoing.
The Minister of Food and Agriculture, through the Ghana Irrigation Authority, continued with the construction and rehabilitation works on the following irrigation schemes, Dawa, Ave Afiniba, Tono Phase 2, Akomadan, Dawenya, Zoedam, Tangasa, and Kore irrigation projects. When completed, a total of 640 hectares of irrigation land will be available for cultivation. In 2014, government will partner the private sector to continue the rehabilitation of existing irrigation schemes to promote all year-round farming.
Also, to address post-harvest challenges and promote agribusiness, the 2014 budget has provided for the construction of 2 modern markets in the Brong Ahafo and northern regions. Farmers are also to enjoy credit to expand their farms as government plans to scale up insurance for the sector.
The Ministry of Agri will pursue the development of modern farmers markets, development of agricultural estates, and the scaling up of the agricultural insurance scheme. The government's assistance of other stakeholders with the commercial agricultural insurance system was established in 2011 on a pilot basis, and this is a scheme that will be expanded.
Though the 2014 budget did not touch on agriculture mechanization, which the previous budget indicated was going to provide 1,000 tractors, 100 maize planters, 10 maize harvesters, and several other machinery for the benefit of farmers, the Deputy Minister for Agriculture, Dr. Ahmed Yakubu Al-Hassan, said it will become a reality soon.
Those items were to come from a Brazilian facility. And as I speak to you, the Minister for Agriculture just came back from Brazil last week to finalize arrangement for those items to be coming to the country. So there's nothing really particularly exciting about coming here to repeat again that, oh, we are going to do this when.
So it's coming.
Absolutely.
The sector, according to government, is recording growth despite the many challenges, including lack of good planting materials and post-harvest losses.
We'll stay on Agric for a moment, and Edward Karo is Deputy General Secretary of the General Agric Workers Union of Ghana. And we're going to talk about the sector for a bit. Many thanks, Edward, for joining us on News Today.
Thank you.
136 million, 2014 for Agric. We'll talk about that. But so far alone, Agric has taken 4.6 million Ghana cedis has been spent on Agric. How did you feel the impact in the sector?
Well, if you need to look at it in relation to the other sectors that have received the same funding, agriculture was the least funded with 4.6 million as compared to the other sectors. So certainly that was good news. That was a good attempt, but then it wasn't so good enough to create the type of impact that we need. Because if you know the extent, the magnitude of agriculture in this country, the length and breadth of this country, and then what needs to be done to make agriculture a more modernized form, 4.6 is a token.
It's still a token.
It's still a token.
But we grew from a little over 1 to 3.4%.
Yeah, that is also good news because 2 years ago, that was 2011 or so, we grew less than 1%, and then 2012 we had 1.2%. So if 2013 we had 3.4%, then certainly that must be good news. It tells you that agriculture is now growing. Yeah. So it also tells you that probably we are putting in place the right measure.
But you, as an Agric worker, do you feel you're growing? Do you feel that impact?
Well, it's quite subjective as an individual to think that we are growing. Some will say that we are growing because their measurement of growth may be different from my other people's measurement. For instance, those farmers or those areas where maize could not be sold because there was a glut, then they will tell you that agriculture was growing. In other areas where there was a shortfall in production, they will tell you that agriculture is not growing. But when you look at the aggregate, and that is what is given to us, that the growth is 3.4%. Certainly, it's a positive one, but it is not where we want to get to. We want to get to a level where all of us can easily feel it, we want to get to a point where we have 10% growth in agriculture. We want to get to a point where when you are going to consume, you now know that you are going to consume Ghanaian produce rather than imported produce. Then that tells you that agriculture has come of age. But as we stand, it is not yet of age.
Let's try and highlight some of the challenges that the sector faced in 2013.
Well, the challenges remain almost the same over the years, but you can put them into three categories. One, production level, then post-harvest processing level, and then marketing. And if you look at the production level, all of us are aware that the financial institutions are shying away from agriculture because it is high-risk area.
Right.
And the reasons are clear, because it is still largely rain-fed and it's unpredictable. So you don't expect financial institutions to pump in their money into an area where they cannot predict. So that part, we need to do so much. In the past, governments have tried to, through the budget, to tell us that they are trying to irrigate the land as much as possible. We heard about the grappling irrigation. Not much has been done in that respect. So you can see that there are still huge challenges. And then if no much has been done in that area, and then other parts of the country, certainly we still have huge area. So that is production level. Where production is even good, then we have post-harvest losses, which is still huge. According to data, we lose between 30 and 35% of produce as post-harvest losses. That is not good enough. So if you're a farmer or you're a producer in agriculture, and then you are now content with only 70%, and the rest go to waste, to be able to recover costs and make profit.
That's a lot of waste.
That is a lot of waste. Now that is up to processing level. Now marketing is the major problem facing agricultural producers. And indeed, it is the major concern of every producer, because you produce in anticipation of the market. So if there's no market, you cannot produce.
Well, when we say markets, locally, or we're looking at international markets?
We are looking at both, locally and international. So first and foremost, you must look at the around your environment. If there's no market, then you then look further, because there are costs and there are other challenges when you have to export, when you have to look at international market. So, but unfortunately, our local market is being taken over by cheap imports from other countries because of our import regime. Policies around importation is so liberal that almost everything can be brought in. Therefore, foodstuffs, which are almost getting to their expiry date, are even imported into this country. So that, again, even constrains the farmer or the producer at the local market. Now, how do you are not able to deal with those challenges, how do you then go out to deal with international challenges? And the international market also has its own challenges, which are not within the control of Ghana government or Ghanaian policymakers. Yeah. So what is within our means is the local market, and we need to work more on that. And then beyond that, create an avenue for people to be able to export.
How do we see the 2014 budget addressing these concerns?
Well, if you look at the SME fund, which is also part of it we use to modernize agriculture, then it's addressing the production concerns. With the marketing, we have been told in the budget that they are going to set up 2 modern farm markets, one in the northern region, one in the Brand-Hartford region. Yeah, that is a start, and it's a good start indeed. If that is done, and then subsequent budgets will extend it to other regions or other parts of the country, then we are growing. So you can see the budget is seeking to address market as well. But all are still at the preliminary level.
Paper stage.
And that is a budget. That is a dream. That is an aspiration. But would that come 2014, November, when we are reading the next budget, could we all come out and say, look, the 2 modern markets we are talking about, look at them, they are there, and it's there for everybody to see. And then we also see that, look, we have invested so much into agriculture now. Now, they also talked about construction and then rehabilitating some irrigation dams. Yeah, we need to see that actualize. And if it is done, certainly we will not have a problem. Then we can pick it from there again. But the major problem with our budgets has to do with implementation.
Which is your biggest fear?
Implementation.
Or even for the 136 million, your biggest fear is the implementation of that cash.
Implementation. Where is the money? Implementation. Because we want it to be implemented. Beyond just the implementation must also be done at the right time, because agriculture is time bound. I can guess that what is budgeted will come in the form of inputs and so on, and they must arrive at the farmer's gate or at the farm gate at the right time. But unfortunately, sometimes we finally give the assistance when it is no more needed, and then it goes into to waste. And then, because of fear of withholding it, and then people will accuse policymakers that, oh, they have not implemented this, they still let it go, and then it goes to waste. That becomes our major concern too. And in fact, if we fail to let inputs get to the farmer at the right time, we should rather withhold that one, so that we can use it the subsequent year, rather than letting it go, and then it will go to waste and will not have the desired results.
Thank you very much, Edward, for your time here on News Today. Edward Kairowa is Deputy General Secretary of the General Agric Workers Union. We've been talking the 2014 budget outlook for the agric sector. Let's move on to the Trade Union Congress, which has also expressed concern over what it terms the silence of the 2014 budget on employment creation. It said the government has once again confirmed to Ghanaians that when it comes to employment, it is a matter of manifestos and not a serious macroeconomic issue for its consideration. And so in a statement signed by its Secretary General, Kofi Asamoah, it said that inflation targeting objective remained against the background that most pressing issues for Ghanaians was that they and their children educated at great cost and gained productive employment that delivered fair incomes. It also goes on to say those observations were the interim issues the TUC had with the 2014 budget and pledged to come up with a comprehensive report stating its views and positions on the policy underpinnings of the budget and the proposals therein. Now, this statement also goes on noting that in this economic policy followed in the tradition this economic policy followed in the tradition of telling Ghanaians about economic growth as measured by the GDP, inflation, and other macroeconomic indices. The statement said over the years, in its engagements on the budget with the government, the TUC had called for a change in the way economic policy had been conducted in the country over the last 30 years. Read the full statement on myjoyonline.com. Right back. You're welcome back to News Today. Now, Finance Minister Setekwe has said the 2014 budget, which is activity-based, will ensure prudence in spending.
For the next 1 year or so, we will be talking about activities as well as programs, because it's activities that are in the programs. For example, Black Stars traveled, Black Stars were camped, but what's the program? The program is to go to Brazil and win the World Cup. This is a distinction, but the activities are embedded in it. And we spoke about some activities, some programs, Chiefs Compound and all those. What we are saying is that going forward, we should be able to relate the budget to these costs. So the point that, the ranking member made, this is what I have to say. But we are in a transition and we will get there. On the macro targets, quickly, when we say our target is single-digit inflation, frankly, it's not something that you should be wedded to, because the economy is dynamic. You face volatilities, gold and cocoa prices. You make several adjustments, and we have been quite clear that we missed the target, and we attribute it to a number of factors. We did mention what he said. We said because we have had to adjust utility prices, you don't meet your single-digit target, so
Parliament has amid stiff opposition from foreign upstream oil and gas companies and their governments endorsed the Petroleum Local Content and Local Participation Regulations 2013. The endorsement by the House followed a report by the Parliamentary Committee on Subsidiary Legislation, which held that the concerns raised by upstream companies were unfounded and that the regulations were not in contravention of the supreme law of the land, the 1992 Constitution, that is. The committee had held a number of meetings to consider the legislative instrument, including concerns raised by the Ghana Exploration and Production Forum, an association of private sector upstream oil and gas companies operating in Ghana. The forum has been opposed to the discretionary powers to determine the persons qualified to enter into a petroleum agreement or receive petroleum license given to the Energy Minister and the Petroleum Commission under the regulations. The forum, in its presentation to the committee, argues that the local content agenda is protectionist and against World Trade Organization agreements. It's criticized Regulations 48, which provides that within 3 months after the commencement of these regulations, a contractor or subcontractor licensee or allied entity engaged in a petroleum activity shall comply with these regulations. The oil companies regard this provision as a unilateral amendment of existing petroleum agreements and a breach of the 1992 Constitution, which frowns on retroactive legislation. John Peter Amewu is Director of Policy at the African Center for Energy Policy. He's joined us over the telephone. Hello, John.
Hello.
We finally managed to pass the LI for local content and local participation in our oil and gas sector. This must be good.
Well, I think this is a very good development for the country, and as citizens and people interested in the growth agenda of this country, we must acknowledge what the government has done.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, notwithstanding that, there have been some issues that we have raised concerning the regulation. One very important element is the mandatory requirement by the sector minister to decide who gets the 5% local participation.
Right.
We see that as not very good for oil governance, and it could lead to corruption, and transparency might not be very open in the sector, especially in an emerging country like Ghana, where we are just getting more involved in the oil and exploration sector. Such involvement are not good. They will not lead to attraction of investors, and they will deter investors from our exploration field.
And so you say it was prudent we passed it amidst that?
Yeah, we tried to raise this concern, but policy leaders were not prepared to take our concern. What we think can be done is that there must be a framework for competitive process, even to determine who that local participant is. Otherwise, a minister can hide behind that clause and go and award the same 5% to his company without knowing who the owners are behind that 5% participation. International oil companies want to be a bit transparent, and so long as that clause prevails, we think that transparency is lacking in the sector.
What can we do about this at this point?
Well, as citizens of this country, what we intend to do is to continue to monitor and examine who those 5% owners will actually be when the time actually comes. You are aware currently government had even passed 2 petroleum agreements, the AGM agreement and the Polar agreement, for which we are asking to know who the owners of those local participations are, or who are the owners behind those agreements. In certain regimes, it is proper for the legislative regime to declare before tenders are open who the owners are. Because if you don't know the owners of some of these agreements, the tendency is that there will be an element of base erosion. Some companies can be registered in tax havens where the owners cannot be declared. And if these things happen, it affects the tax base of the company and the revenue position of the company in terms of what the Ghana government gain
So how do we describe this? Was it a good move, or we just passed the history?
The regulation as it stands is good. It gives Ghanaians some element of participation and involvement in the sector, but then there are still weaknesses. Okay, and those are the weaknesses that we're talking about. Notwithstanding the ministerial discretion, as the law stands, it's okay. We have listened to the international oil companies raising concern about the criminal aspect of, non-conformity with the law. But see, what is important about that is that is not the first option. That is the last option. It comes after you have refused to do certain things. There's a penalty after refusal to pay the penalty. Then the criminal option, comes as the last option. So criminality as an option to non-fulfillment of the local content regulation has been raised by the international companies and the donor agencies. I think it's not anything that we can talk about now. It's good. It happens in other regimes, and Ghana importing similar things to Ghana. There's nothing wrong about it at all. Our concern is what I've stated earlier on. The ministerial decision as to who owns the 5% is very critical for us as a country.
And they tell us also that it is against the regulations of the World Trade Organization. Does this pose any form of threat or danger for us?
No, issues of protectionism are being raised. But you see, within the same context of the WTO, the TRIMs make arrangements for what we call emerging countries. And so if you're an emerging country, there must be some element of protectionism. Of course, you can't put an emerging country with a mature country to go on the same competitive platform.
Right.
Definitely, a mature country will, be a winner. And so within the same WTO, having determined this element of weaknesses in emerging or young countries, they have made provisions for some element of protectionism. And so it is not a complete protectionism as has been demonstrated. But the worry is that, yes, it is true, this protectionism can lead to some cost premium. Okay? But it is left to Ghana to evaluate the cost premium over a period and see how that cost premium can translate into a gain in the long run. We have witnessed it in Trinidad and Tobago, of course, when there was a cost premium on their construction of a platform. But what happens after the next 2-3 years is that as a result of that cost premium, they were able to gather experiences and construct other platforms at a very competitive rate.
So, John, let me just rope this in quickly. What are your impressions on the 2014 budget as far as energy production is concerned?
Well, I think we have seen some actions taken by government, especially with regard to allocations of the AFA to the 4 priority areas. Our concern is that government continues actions to reduce in terms of the amount of money that is sent to the agri sector. It's very worrying. If you look at the budget, yes, there's some element of growth in the agri sector. But it's the amount that is, given from the annual budget funding amount. It's not very adequate. Government again continues allocation to expenditure and amortization of loans for the oil and gas infrastructure. We think this is a misappropriation of funds because Section 21 of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act specified realistic areas where this money should be used for. Okay, though there is a provision for other areas. If the expenditure and amortization of loans for the oil and gas is a very vital and a major area, it should be specified in the section. It is not there. And so we think that government continuous allocation to amortization of loans for oil and gas infrastructure is inconsistent and with the law. And going forward, we need to re-examine that. It is a fact that there have been some improvement in the 2014. For instance, the agri sector is receiving almost about $62 million from the $4 million in 62 million dollars in 2040, which is good. But we want more improvement in this.
We'll leave it there, John. Many thanks. John Peter Amewu is Director of Research and Policy at the Africa Center for Energy Policy. Move on to some others. President John Dramani Mahama has continued his tour of the northern region, and that's just before we get into some sports when I return.
The other issue has to do with His Excellency the President will be having a working visit in northern region in the Upper East region and in the Upper West region. It's a visit that he'll be having. He will take the opportunity to visit certain projects that government is undertaking or executing in those regions. It is going to take a maximum of 2 or 3 days that he'll be able to finish the northern region, the Upper East region, and then the Upper West region. There will be some debates of chiefs that are also planned so that he would have interactions with them. Because as part of the good governance and transparent governance, I think that participation is significant. And the fact that His Excellency the President would take the opportunity to visit these people in their homes, in their communities, and have a first-hand, understanding of what their problems are, tailored into the vision of the government. We think that this is something that all of us need to commend His Excellency the President for. We also think that the challenges confronting us as people, there is some hope at the end of the tunnel. And we are convinced that at the end of the day, His Excellency the President will be able to fulfill, if not all, but most of the promises that were made for the people of this country to give him the mandate they gave him.
We'll do some sports news when I return. Don't go away. Well, you're welcome back to News Today. This is the sports segment. And let's check out our African World Cup qualifiers.
Despite the odds stacked heavily against them, Egypt showed intent from the opening whistle. But the Black Stars always posed a threat, and Mamelodi Sundowns defender Rashid Somalia shot just wide after a swift counter. Egypt, though, were more dominant, and they duly opened the scoring when Amir Zaki nodded in a Mohamed Aboutrika free kick.
Egypt have a goal. Is the miracle comeback on? It's Amir Zaki.
With his confidence sky high, the former Wigan Athletic striker was in the zone. He took a fine save by the Orlando Pirates stopper Fatau Dawood had to keep the score 1-0. The Ghana defence was constantly tested. Great work by Mohamed Salah and Ahmed Shadid Kinawi created an opening, but Salah's shot lacked the required purchase. Egypt leading by 1-0 at the break. The Pharaohs continued their search for an improbable 4 goals in the second 45. Aboutrika showing great technique, but his shot flew just over. With the clock winding down, their task was going from improbable to impossible. Even with the Ghanaian stopper beaten, they still couldn't find a way past the Black Stars' defence. Despite their World Cup dream all but dashed, Egypt did double their lead through Mohamed Gedo. But the mood was dampened minutes from the full-time whistle. Great work by Harrison Afful and Asamoah Gyan set up Kevin Prince Boateng, who finished with aplomb.
This could be 2-1, it is 2-1, and it's a goal-scoring return to Ghanaian international colours for Kevin Prince Boateng.
2-1 is how things ended as Ghana advanced to their 3rd straight World Cup, while Egypt still haven't qualified since their last appearance at Italia 90.
It was their way, though, was a tricky Burkina Faso side who held a 3-2 advantage, and the African Cup of Nations runners-up were no pushovers. Despite the 1-goal deficit, the Desert Foxes would have been confident going into the game, having not lost at the Mustafa Chaka Stadium since 2002. Islam Slimani had a good chance to put his side in front, but he failed to trouble the keeper with his head. The first shot on target came in the dying minutes of the first half as the teams went into their break at 0-0. The half-time interval seemed to do the home team wonders as they eventually took the lead.
And there it is, the goal's been scored, Algeria, and it's Bouguera. He manages to just kick the ball past the goalkeeper from close range. And look.
Now, President Mahama has congratulated the Black Stars of Ghana for securing a 3rd consecutive qualification to the World Cup. President Mahama said the Black Stars have made Ghanaians proud and warned other nations that they are likely to meet Ghana in Brazil to beware. Ghana qualified for the World Cup finals on Tuesday evening despite losing 2-1 away to Egypt in the second leg of the CAF playoff. Let's take a listen to Deputy Information Minister Murtala Mohammed.
It is important also to state that the Black Stars have had some support from several, private organizations and institutions. We think that the support, like Oliver Twist, you would always ask for more. It is our hope and conviction that the Black Stars will make us proud, not only qualifying to play in the African Cup in the World Cup, but they will make us proud that this time round, possibly we may take the cup or at least get to the final, semi-final stage. We had the opportunity, but for the absolute misconduct of a player called Suarez, who were denied the opportunity to make history, Ghana will remain a beacon of hope for many countries, not only in the field of governance and politics, but most importantly in the field of sports. And I think that was what the boys did. I was there myself, and contrary to the view of many people that the Egyptians played more than us, I believe that our boys were tactical, and they played to the dictates of the coach or the technical team. That when a team is down by 6 goals to 1, you don't go there rushing to play the way they are. They were hungrier than we were. We wanted to qualify, and I think that we achieved that. So we all need to congratulate them and support them, as I indicated, so that we don't only go to Brazil, but we go to Brazil to do well. The other very important point that I would want to reiterate is the prayer of the ordinary Ghanaian.
That'll be all for the segment, brought to you by Tigo. Several armed groups in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo have said they are ready to lay down their weapons following the army's defeat of M23 rebels. Since then, there has been a series of letters and declarations by other militias expressing their willingness to be demobilized. It has been 2 weeks since the M23 rebels fled from their last holdouts in Congo after coming under intense bombardment from the UN-backed Congolese army. Other armed groups in North Kivu province seem anxious to avoid the same fate. Now, straw-colored fruit bats found across much of Africa carry 2 deadly viruses that a new study outlines the extent of the infection. We understand that this virus could affect people as well. According to the study, 1/3 of the bats are infected with a virus similar to the one which causes rabies, and 42% carry Henipavirus, which can cause a fatal disease. Researchers with the University of Cambridge and the Zoological Society of London looked at blood and tissue samples from more than 2,000 bats in 12 African countries. Now, they found the animals were largely genetically similar, which means they travel and mix freely across the continent. Senior author James Wood from the University of Cambridge says that facilitates the spread of the virus. Fruit bats live in groups of more than 100,000 and often congregate near cities. They are frequently hunted for meat, which can spread the pathogens to humans. Henipavirus can also be spread through contact with bat urine or feces. That'll be all for the segment, but let's check out some showbiz news and now after the break. You're welcome back. The Volta region, like many other regions in the country, has a very colorful culture. This was evident over the weekend when President Mahama paid a 2-day working visit to the region.
Although the Volta region is known predominantly for the Ewa language, there are actually 2 main languages spoken there. Ewa spoken in the southern part of the region and Akan spoken in the northern part of the region. So when President Mahama embarked on a 2-day working tour of the region, the indigenes did not waste time showcasing the various elements that make up the Ewa culture. As is customary with every social occasion, the derbes held in his honor started with traditional prayers thanking the gods for traveling mercies. The fast-paced rhythm of the bobobo took center stage when the president hit the regional capital, Ho.
This is News Today and a recap of our headlines. The Ghana Trades Union Congress expresses concern over what it terms the silence of the 2014 budget on employment creation. My name is Kemini Nyamani, and I'll see you Thursday.